Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Everything Horror Podcast. And my name is Paul Donsky. And once again, we have a nice little interview for the Women in Horror Month. And with us is another author, but she's got like 2, maybe 3 books under her name, which she can correct me there. But as far as I know, it's 2. But she also has her work spread out other like collections. So without further ado, this is Red Lagoe.
Yeah, Red Lagoe. That's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I have 2 books, 2 novels. Well, no, I'm gonna stop there. I have 1 novel out, Fair Haven. That was my first book, and then I have a collection of short stories coming out at the end of the month.
Right, yeah. And that comes out the 24th or 28th or something like that, right?
Yep, the 28th. Lucid Screams.
Yes, and I recently read that for you and did a nice little write up without hopefully going into too much, because I know how some reviewers are. They like to either go into each individual story, or it kind of gives you like I guess sort of what I did, a kind of rough idea of what you kind of talk about without saying too much either.
Yeah, it was a beautiful review. I loved it. I actually used part of it as a blurb for the back of the book.
Oh, really? Oh, I'll have to.
So thank you.
I'll have to get it then, so that way I can add it to the collection, or go get it for you at least, so that way I can have it for the collection, I guess, that I got going on.
Cool, yeah.
Yeah. Let's just say it right now. When you actually get your own personal copy, let me know, and I'll reach out to you for one personally from you.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. So, Red, for those listening, like myself and stuff, because I actually found you last year for the Women in Horror, actually, but I didn't really get a chance to read your Fair Haven thing because I just had so much going on, considering, it was Women in Horror Month, and I was trying to even figure out what I was doing around that time anyway, so not that much was really going on with us. But anyway, yes, I do remember Fair Haven. You were giving it out for free, I think, for the first week of Women in Horror Month, actually. And so I snapped it, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to get to this. And then I never got to it. And then like,
I do that all the time.
And yeah, me too. It's like, oh, I can't wait to read this. And then you get it, and it's just like, oh.
Yeah, life kind of gets in the way, and then you don't get around to everything that you want to read. I have a ton on my shelf that I mean to read, and then I just don't get to it.
Yeah, I kind of have like one of those like backlist thing where it's just like, I need to catch up on all these before I even catch up on this. So it's like, oh boy, trying to play the catch up game. And yeah, and then I saw you make a post about you were bringing out this book, Lucid Screams, and I was like, okay, I gotta reach out to her because I wanna like see more of what she can do. And plus, I keep seeing your posts about submitting your stories to these collections, I guess. That, am I right about that? It's like they're collections of other people's stories, or how does that work?
Yeah, so a few years ago, so what was it, 2017, I released Fair Haven, and that was kind of a practice novel. I didn't really know what I was doing. I knew I wanted to write. I knew I wanted to create, but I didn't have a lot of experience under my belt. And so while I was writing Fair Haven, it was like a 2-year process. I was going to workshops and learning as I was writing. And so it was this whole, like I'd write the story and then I'd learn something new. I'd have to go back and rewrite. And then I'd learn something new in another class and I'd go back and rewrite. And eventually it got to the point where Fair Haven became less of a practice novel and more of like I had too much of my heart and soul in it, and so people that had read it told me I should go ahead and release it, and so I did. I sent it to as many beta readers as I could, and did as many edits as I could, and released it, and people seem to like it. And since Fairhaven, I've been, and even during Fairhaven, I was writing a lot of short stories and submitting to different anthologies that were putting out calls for submissions. And for a couple years, I'd only get an acceptance every so often, like maybe 3 a year. And then the acceptances started rolling in a little more consistently last year. And that's when I decided, hey, maybe my writing's getting a little bit better and I should take all these short stories and put them into a collection. And that's what Lucid Screams is. Lucid Screams are all those short stories, well, almost all the short stories that got accepted, and then a few new ones too. And yeah, and I'm releasing it February 28th.
Fair enough. And for those listening, can you describe yourself a little bit of like what made you kind of start wanting to write, and what made you even want to become an author?
Yeah. So right now I write horror stories, and I substitute at an elementary school. Prior to that, before I started writing, I was working as a veterinary assistant, and I did some technician work for a while. And I got to this point in my career where I wasn't really making a lot of money. I wasn't making enough to pay for daycare and gas to get to work. And so I had to make the call as to whether or not to keep working. And so I became a stay-at-home mom for a short time. And like domestic life, that's horror. I couldn't handle it. I didn't have the chops for it. I decided to start writing. I needed to create, and I didn't know what to create. And so I started writing children's books. I experimented with genres, and it didn't come to me right away that I wanted to write horror until I wrote that first horror story. And then I realized all these children's books I was trying to write were too dark, and it just made sense that horror just kind of clicked with me. And so that's what I've been sticking with ever since about 2016 was horror.
Nice. Did you have any inspiration from any other author that you kind of looked up to, or that you always had to read their latest book, or that came out just because you just loved the way the specific author, I guess, spoke to you?
Not before I started writing. So before, and this is blasphemy, I know, and I'm probably going to be like condemned for it, but I didn't read a lot of fiction prior to writing. I knew I had the stories, I had that creative urge, but I wasn't reading a lot of fiction. Most of what I read was nonfiction articles and stuff like that. And so when I decided to start writing, and when I started learning about writing, I realized I need to know my genre. I need to start reading more. And so I tried to read some Stephen King. I tried to read just kind of his backlog, and I didn't get very far because all these new writers are out there, and I had to give them a chance. And so I'm kind of a fairly new horror reader also in the past few years. But the ones that kind of speak to me, the ones that stood out are Paul Tremblay. I read his Disappearance on Devil's Rock and Cabin at the End of the World, and I loved those. I loved his style. I read some Sarah Tatlinger. I loved her work. So I'm kind of learning as I'm learning to write. I'm learning a lot about the different authors out there as I write.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has their own way, and usually sometimes people have, this one specific author that they like to read, and every time they get a new book out, it's always like, I need to get it day one it comes out, sort of thing, just because, it's just that the click, I guess, like, the work off the page. And at least
and for me,
And
Oh,
that's
I'm
what it
sorry.
did for me too. No, you're good.
I was just gonna say, for me, I think that would be Paul Tremblay, even though it's fairly a new obsession. He's the one that I read, and it really clicked, and I liked his style.
What type of style that he has? Just like the way he way he goes about like with the mystery. Like I'm trying to figure out how to word that
Yeah,
better.
I like the I like his prose. I like his word choice. I like the way he uses words on the page. Story development, and I like the ambiguity of his stories.
Hmm.
So, like with Head Full of Ghosts and Cabin at the End of the World, you don't really know what was really happening by the end of the book. It wasn't explicitly explained. It kind of left some things in the air for the reader to make that choice, and I like that in stories that you don't have to tell the reader what's happening on. You can let the reader figure it out for themselves. And I kind of like that in art in general. Um, Not everything needs to be explained. Sometimes the art can just speak for itself, and it can mean something different to each reader or to each observer.
Exactly, help the imagination run wild. So, there
Mm-hmm.
so short stories. How are you getting the ideas for them? Because you had quite a few, like you mentioned and I mentioned, that went into these collections, anthologies, and different stories. So,
Mm-hmm.
what's your inspiration? What pops at you to say, "Oh, I would like to write a story about like this," or is it one of those things where you're sleeping and then it just comes into your brain and then you got to shoot out of bed like, I need to write this down before I forget because this is an awesome idea.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So usually it's just some random thing, some random phrase, or some random what if that pops in my head, and this it's just this little seed of a concept, and I have a file in my phone since I always have my phone on me. I have a file on my phone for story ideas, and I just plug it in there, and sometimes it's just a few random words. Sometimes I look back at it and I don't even know what I meant, especially if I've been drinking. Like, what does this mean? Kangaroo ice cream fight. I don't know what that means. I had a conversation with someone one night while we were having a drink, and somehow kangaroo ice cream fight came to be in my story ideas. I still don't
Uh,
know what to do with it.
Kangaroo ice cream fight, huh? Hmm.
Yeah. I'm not really sure what happened to that. Someone was having a conversation about a kangaroo.
I
I
guess
don't know.
maybe this kangaroo ate some bad ice cream and then became zombified. I mean, I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I take stuff like that and I kind of use it. So I was having a conversation one night, and this idea of like a husband wife murder team, kind of a serial killer team, popped in my head. So I just plugged it in my phone, and later when there was a call for submissions, it was Sinister Smile Press. They were looking for submissions to their If I Die Before I Wake anthology. And so I started going through my ideas file because nothing could come to me, and I saw that and I was like, hey, I could use that one.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, real quick too, because I don't know if we touched on it, and I just want to just back up for a minute too, and just make
Mhm.
sure that we do get it. So, for somebody like myself, because I just admitted I haven't gotten a chance to read it yet, even though I read Lucid Scream. But for somebody who had not read Fairhaven, if you had to sell a book to them or a fan of yours, like if you were at a convention and be like, "Hey, would you be interested in this? And here's why." What would you tell them about what Fairhaven is?
Oh gosh, okay. I haven't elevator pitched this book in a few years, so I think I would say that Fairhaven is a viral apocalypse story. It's about a woman who um, she's trapped in her house while the viral apocalypse is kind of destroying her world around her, and her husband is is across town somewhere, stuck at work, and she has to make the decision whether or not to go save him. And they're also suffering from a failing marriage. So it's kind of a zombie story, but they're not really zombie stories. I mean, they're not really zombies. They're it's like a rabies super virus, and it's the zombie story I always wanted to tell because I love zombies, but the problem I have with them is that they just keep going, and like they should be dead. Like there's no way their bodies can keep going. So my quote unquote zombies are more like people that are suffering from this really advanced form of rabies. So you can shoot them in the heart, and they'll keep going for probably a few seconds, but eventually their brain supply is not going to get oxygen anymore, and they'll die.
Okay. So it's like a little twist, or I don't know if I want to say twist, but it's like a new way of looking at zombies. Yeah.
I like to think so.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like, I think that might be one reason why I grabbed it when you were doing that promotion too. It's just because I think you kind of pitched something like that, like it was a apocalyptic zombie thing, but like a new way of looking at them. So that's really cool. I'll have to one of these days just like re-download it on the Kindle or something and like read it there or wherever I have it. So that way I can read it because I would like to check it out because that's more of a story than the short stories. So I mean, it's nice to see the different type of writing other like people can do and what they're capable of telling for stories versus having a limited typo or type in thing. I forget what they call it. You would know.
Yeah, like they just have, I don't know. I don't know the word either. I have it a lot.
Okay,
I know what you're talking about. They kind of get stuck in a certain type of storytelling or certain subgenre.
Right. Yeah, and just like you got only 500 words to use to make a story, so go. It's like, oh, okay. Let me think about that for a second.
All right. That's tough. And that's helped me. Those little flash fiction challenges like that have actually, I think, they've helped me grow as a writer because you don't have as many words to play with, so only the most important words count. So when you're writing flash fiction where you only have 500 words or even 1,000 words, like you really got to make those words count and be able to tell a story. And so I love those challenges, those little flash fiction pieces.
Yeah, I agree. Those are always like the best because it kind of makes you become that better writer too, where you can be like, well, how can I make this better? Or what didn't work in this one story that I don't make the same mistake again, or what worked so I can maybe make it better for this story or something like that. Yeah, it's great for sure. Is there any stories or any parts of Fairhaven, just like in general, I guess, like throughout your entire writing career, is there any one that you kind of wish you could go back and fix?
I think it'd be Fairhaven. Because, like I said, Fairhaven, I was still new. I mean, I'm still a new writer, and I'm still learning. But Fairhaven, I was brand spanking new, and I think I mentioned it before. It was kind of my practice novel, and so I'm proud of what I did with the little experience I had. But I look at it now, and there's like some craft issues with it, a lot of like filtering and a little bit of point of view, but not, a little bit of point of view issues. So readers that don't write, they've read it and really liked it, but writers that look at it will probably find all sorts of problems. And so I would never go back and fix it because it's done, it's out there. I'm ready to move on. but that's one. that's one I think could probably use fixing.
Well, I was gonna actually just ask. There is some people that actually do go back like 5 years or so later, and uh, they want to republish like their first book or something, but it's more of
Right.
a updated version. Would you want to do something like that with Fairhaven down the road?
Oh, maybe. Maybe if I hit a roadblock and I don't have any new story ideas, maybe I think I might. Maybe I might do that.
Yeah, I
Maybe
mean, you could
zombies would
even
make a
like,
comeback.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you could always, if you could. I mean, I'm not quite sure because I haven't read it yet. But if there was a way to continue the story, you could at least or start, have the same name like
Yeah.
say Fairhaven 2, but have whole
Hmm.
new characters.
Oh yeah, and I've actually considered that writing another story set in the same world with the same virus, but have different characters experience it. I have considered that.
Yeah, could it's sometimes doing that you can almost redeem your practice book, as you called it, to show you people that like you've improved yourself, you learned more things. So it's like here what I can do now versus the first time you read this book.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you just sold me on
All right.
it.
Well, I mean, it gives you an idea. I mean, I would just, sometimes it's like always good to be able to continue something maybe in a different light of somebody else's point of view of how they would take
Mhm.
on the situation. So maybe that's why I suggested it. But I just recently just saw like this book that's going on its like fifth anniversary, but I guess you can't get the original one anymore. So now they're trying to push out a fifth anniversary like updated hardback version of this thing. So it's just like, oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, there's always that too, and I mean, now there's always that thing where people are trying to do the whole ultimate collection thing. So they like throw everything in one book, and then it's like, here you go.
Oh wow. Yeah, that'd be really cool. I don't know if I have
Yeah, no, the
the
time or
status
energy.
to pull off an ultimate collection.
Well, you never know. You never know if that ride is there or that, yeah, that ride, because I guess you would want to ride the wave of the adventure to like make it happen. Then yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
there's always that. So more power to anybody, really. Which
Yeah.
who did the cover art for?
My cover art. I did. You mean for Lucid Screams?
For Root to Scream, Fairhaven.
For Lucid Screams, I did the cover art, and it's partially illustrated, and I did the illustrations inside. It was actually my first time playing around with charcoals, which is crazy because I took, I wasn't technically an art major, but I took a lot of art electives in high school and college, and I had never really messed around with charcoals, and so I picked them up because I like the moodiness of charcoals, if that makes sense, and I started playing with them, and it just kind of flowed out of me, and so I went ahead and did the cover for Lucid Screens, and it turned out that was actually supposed to be a practice drawing with watercolor and charcoal, and it actually turned out a lot nicer than I was expecting, so I used it as the cover. For Fairhaven, I had the concept in mind, but I wasn't great with Photoshop, so I gave the concept to my husband, and he played around with it on Photoshop, and he did the design of the cover because he actually did a lot of Photoshop and design classes in college.
Wow. Well, It's always cheaper that way too, to do it yourself, I will say, or find somebody that you know who's really good that wouldn't mind helping you out. So it's always good
I
that.
know. Then there's always a risk doing it yourself too, especially if you're not a professional, because it can turn out pretty bad, and a bad cover is gonna is gonna hurt you. And so there are some flaws with my covers, but I think they're okay.
Well, if
Considering I
you
don't have
like
the
them,
money
you like
to
them.
pay.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
sorry?
I was
Yeah.
saying, as long as you like them, then who cares, really? I mean, it's just, I mean, the readers should care, but I mean, the
Yeah.
way I look at it is, it's your creation. If you like the cover, then run with it, because otherwise, yeah, you might have some people that complain all the time because of something. Oh, this
Yeah.
shouldn't have been here. This represents something completely different. Blah blah blah. And it's like,
I like that philosophy.
yeah. It's just like, let's go on to the next review. Let's see. Now, when it came to writing too, like, did you take any type of, uh, I guess, classes when it comes to, like, or anything really to kind of help you with do I want to say journalism? I mean, I don't think that would be the right way to word it, but like, you know what I mean? Like, were there any sort
Yeah.
of type of classes to take for when it comes to trying to write your own story? Like, I guess, but
There
I'm sure,
there
yeah,
were.
yeah.
Yeah, so I joined when I realized that I wanted to write seriously. I joined a local writers organization called Hampton Roads Writers, and they offer these monthly workshops on different topics. And so every month I'd go to a different topic workshop. One would be on point of view, the next one would be on setting, one might be on dialogue, and so I took everyone that I could that was going to be helpful, and I learned from them, and they were pretty low cost. So because I was a member, they're only $10 each class, which is crazy to have $10 for a 2.5 hour workshop. But that's about all I could afford. So I did workshops. I did a lot of online articles and on writing books, and I learned as much as I could without taking really expensive classes.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me a little bit of back in middle school. I had a elective class. I think that's what they called this thing, and it was for like poetry, and so I took that class for like 2 years for my seventh and eighth class, and yeah, I made some weird. I guess you could say poems from that class. Like, still have the books that the teacher actually published for us, so we could at least have something of our work, like, quote, published, even though it
Oh,
wouldn't
that's
really.
cool.
Yeah, it was called the poetry or poetry tree or something like that. But yeah,
Mhm.
I had one called the bee, where
Mhm.
you could take that dark if you wanted to, just because of the way it kind of turned out. It was kind of weird. Um, I kind of looked at it as it was a allergic reaction to why this guy finger swelled to the sky, as I called it.
Oh, cool.
Uh,
That's cool.
yeah, I still remember like a little bit about it, but like, and then another published one that I had was called "Come With Me," which was pretty much like, I was trying to talk about, like, if we could come with me to like a magical place where everything was free and stuff like that. We could all like have fun and stuff like that. But of course, that was me.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, right. And then of course I
What?
write this thing called The Bee, and it's talking about how this guy got stung on the finger, sat on his couch or something like that, and then his finger swelled to the sky. So yeah, whatever.
No, that's really cool. And those moments, especially when you're that age, when you're that young, those moments they mean a lot. I think they kind of plant a seed in kids to pursue those things later in life, even if it's not immediately. Eventually, they might go back to it. I wrote a short story back when I was like 11 years old, and my mom read it and she typed it up on her like legit typewriter, and and
Oh,
she edited it for me. Yeah, and because I wrote it in handwriting and she typed it up, and like she was really encouraging. She was like, you should write, but it wasn't anything that I thought I wanted to do. And then what happened when I grew up, and it wasn't until I was 30 something years old that I was like, hey, maybe I should write. So I think those moments when you're young, when someone sees your work and does something with it, like your teacher published it, and that's amazing. That's so important for kids to have some kind of role model in their life, some kind of person that's willing to kind of advocate for them and do those things to encourage them to be creative.
that makes a lot of sense, actually. I like that. I like that a lot. I actually just found the BT if you would like to hear it.
Yeah, let's do it.
So this is like officially like almost 20 years old. So I'm not even lying. Like, yeah, 2000 was when I wrote this thing back in middle school. So it's so this is called The Bee by me, Podolsky. Buzz said the bee, then he flew into a tree. Oh, gee, that guy is going to swat me. Buzz said the bee. As he stung him with his stinger right on the finger, the man yelled, ouch, and went home to sit on his couch. Buzz said to bee, he lay down to die slowly. Goodbye, said the guy as his fingers went to the sky. So that was my bee. Yeah.
I love it.
Like I said, pretty dark if you want to look at it dark, because I did say this the man go to die on a couch pretty much.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Kind of I just thought that was just
Amazing.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty amazing. I have like two stories from when I was a kid that I think I kept, and one was called Creature from Over the Hill, and it was highly influenced by the movie Watchers. I don't know if you remember that, Jem. It's from the 80s. Corey Haim was in it. I had a major crush on him. There's like this creature, and this dog could sense the creature. I haven't seen it in ages, and I don't know. Corey Haim had to defeat the creature, and the dog was just pale. Anyway, and so my story was very much influenced by that. There's this girl, 17, home alone. She was at a cabin. She had a dog, and there's this creature that like landed in a comet or something, and and she had to fight it. And she was like making Molotov cocktails. And I really worried my mom because she was like, "How do you know how to make those explosives?" Because I watch movies, Mom. So that was one of them that I still have, and then the other one I still have is it's a screenplay that I had to write for class called Brains, where and there might be a VHS video of me and two other classmates out there acting it out. But basically, we got in a car accident and our brains weren't working right, and we kept I think it ended up being more like a multiple personality disorder situation. But we were killing people. We were like 12. That was the darkest story in the whole class.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
thought
fun to go back and revisit.
I thought the bee was like a little bit dark compared to everybody else's like happy go lucky. Let's go pick flowers. Let's go run in the meadows or whatever. And over here, I'm just like, yeah, I got this guy that gets stung and goes home to die. Like, of that. So,
Mm-hmm. And that's I think that's the way it is with people in the horror genre. Because whenever I listen to interviews, that seems to be the answer to the question. You know, how long have you liked horror? Everybody says always. It's just always. I've always been interested. And I think that's just the case of people who are interested in horror. It's just always been there, that willingness to explore that dark side. It's there since we're little.
yeah, I think it's been a while since I actually said how I got into horror, but if it was recent, then I'm sorry, people listening, but I just want to tell Red because at least you'll know.
Yeah, I don't know how you got into horror. Tell me.
I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I was supposed to be in bed, and instead I was that naughty little boy that would like sneak downstairs and see what my parents were watching at the time. And well, I sneaked downstairs this one night, and I peeked in the living room because the way the house was, we had like this weird. Carpentry, I guess, would be the better way of putting it. But like it was like a kitchen, and you could almost count the kitchen with more like almost 2 rooms if you really wanted to. Like it was that type of weird type of setup. But at the same time, if you look to your right, you had this doorway in the wall, but you could still hide yourself. Like if you were to be like me and sneak downstairs, so you could kind of peek over into the doorway and see the TV. And so that's what I did. And when I watched to see what they were watching, it would actually, and I didn't know it at the time until later on. I grew up and watched the film. And then I realized, oh, so this is the movie I, snuck downstairs and couldn't figure out if I should be watching this or not. And it was Bram Stoker's Dracula. But it was the part.
Very cool.
But it was the part where Mina, I believe, I haven't seen the movie now in forever, but I think it was Mina that was getting put on the table with the werewolf. It was that scene.
Oh.
And like as that weird scene goes and plays out, it's like I don't think I'm supposed to be watching this. So I put it back upstairs to go to sleep. So, but later on, I watched like Alien and all kinds of good classical horror films.
Oh yeah.
So like my love for Alien has stayed with me ever since. I can't not have enough Alien. So yeah.
Yeah. I that's another one I haven't watched in a long time. It's Alien. But I remember loving it. I loved any of the horror movies where there's a female protagonist. Actually, so I have a similar situation. I didn't sneak down to watch the movie. My whenever my mom had to leave the house at night, my older brothers were in charge, and they would always rent movies. So I grew up 80s and 90s. Like my first 10 years were in the 80s, and then then it was on to the 90s for my teen years. And so my brothers would go to the action video rental place in town, and they'd pick up whatever horror movies were on the shelf. And so I grew up on whatever they wanted to watch while mom was out of the house. So it'd be old school like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th and Halloween, and then all the B movie stuff too, like Chud and Basket Case and all the the blood and boobs, slumber party and whatnot. And so, and I was watching this in elementary school, and so I developed this imagination of like, what would I do if I were the final girl? And so a lot of my playtime was coming up with these daydreams and scenarios of how would I survive.
Well, that's always fun, actually. And you saying like video rental just brought me back to my memories where, like, when I was actually old enough to have my own job and stuff. And I remember when Blockbuster was still around. Yes, I know I probably sound like a dinosaur to some people now. They don't even know what the hell
No,
Blockbuster is. So,
no, I still have my old Blockbuster card.
me too. So ancient. Like,
hmm
people won't even know what the hell it is. But yeah, that's what I
hmm
used to do every weekend. I used to rent 4 movies every week. Uh,
hmm
so fun. I miss those days. I found so many horror movies, and it was great. Like, I found one called Dead Girl. I found Dead Snow. I found the original Quarantine, which is the Spanish version of Wreck. That was amazing. Yeah, I found a lot of weird, interesting stuff that I just, got into the horror genre more just by doing that.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yeah. But, Red, is there like anything really too that I didn't touch on with you that you would like to discuss? I feel like, I don't want to like overkill everything with Fairhaven and Woosted Scream too, but um, is there anything that I haven't mentioned that you would like to say too?
Um, Not that I can think of. No, my big thing is Lucid Screams because it comes out on the 28th, and I'm just super excited about it. And so far the reviews have been good.
Well,
I just hope good reviews keep coming in.
Well, good. I mean, like you were saying, it seems like everybody seems to be enjoying everything that you're putting out now. And like you were saying earlier, the submissions seem to be getting up there with I believe you put it as acceptance. So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's good. And so what are you working on? Is there anything you're working on now, or is there like another type of horror collection that you're trying to submit to, or what's going on?
Well, I'm always working on something. But so while I'm wrapping up Lucid Screams, final touches and whatnot before publication, I am putting together my next story, my next book. Um, I won't say too much about it, but
Oh,
I
that's fun.
think it's going to be like a kind of a coming of age tale. Of
Hmm.
course, it's kind of spooky and horror filled. Um, there's there's not a ton out there, at least not that I know of coming of age tales with girls. So you got all these, you have like um, Stranger Things and Stand by Me and what are I can't even think of the other ones.
There,
The stories where you got a group of boys or mostly boys, and they're coming of age and they're experiencing something horror filled, and there's not a lot out there with girls unless it's witchcraft, and so I'm hoping to do something coming of age with girls, and but it's not witchcraft.
you're just trying to change the tides on it. You're trying to do something different.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like the girl stories I've read. I was never that girl. I was I was always the one getting dirty and going exploring where I shouldn't be exploring, and I was kind of a tomboy growing up, and so I want to tell the story of the girls that don't really have their stories told.
Hey, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there sometimes, or not all. Well, let me figure out how I should word this here. Used to know some Tom girls, and it was weird at first because it was just like, oh, okay, this is different because it's just like Tom girl, okay, and then like as you grow older, you start to realize like, oh, okay, well this makes sense of what the definition of a Tom girl is, and it's just like, oh, okay, well that's cool. So whatever,
Yeah,
whatever everybody wants to be, I guess. I mean,
yeah. Well, I grew up with 3 brothers,
Yeah, exactly.
And I was the only girl, so I played with my brothers. I played with my brothers' friends, and if I wanted to play with other kids, I had to play with the boys, and so I had to get dirty. I had to get hit with the ball. I had to get knocked down, and if I cried, I didn't get to play. So I just grew up trying to be tougher than tougher than I really am.
That actually ends up turning out to be just fine, though. You get to see the strong women come out that way, though.
Yeah, hope so.
Well, I would think so. But yeah, so a couple things is one is, where can people keep up to date with you, Red? And where are your books or the horror collection that you know of anyway available, or if they're on like the same platform?
Okay. I wish I could name some cool local bookstore, but it's tough getting your self-published work into local places and into places like Barnes and Noble and whatnot, for that matter. But most of my stuff is on Amazon. Like Fairhaven and Lucid Screams will be on Amazon. And then a lot of my short stories, I have short stories published with Crystal Lake Publishing in their Shallow Waters series. So they have Shallow Waters Anthology, volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4. I have a story in each of those. And those can all be found on Amazon, or you can go directly to their website, Crystal Lake Publishing, and find them there. And then I have a new story published, fairly new story, back in December, published with Sinister Smile Press. What else? Dark Moon Digest accepted my story, and that just released. Dark Moon Digest, issue 38. I have a story in that one too. But for the most part, I think you can find everything on Amazon.
Yes, I have seen a lot of stuff on Amazon, and actually, to be honest, I just found 2 titles. One is one of the horror collections, and the other one is actually Fairhaven on Barnes and Noble. To be honest, so
yeah, I've seen some of the stuff on Barnes and Noble too.
yeah, but it just looks like you just need to request your book in at Barnes and Nobles. So, which is fine, because usually that's how you get your work in places anyway. So
yeah, Barnes and Noble is kind of a stickler about self-published work. It has to be, your sales have to be pretty darn good to to get into the big bookstores like that.
right, but as long as we get people that request it, though, you have that much more of a chance to get in too.
Yeah. Go request my book at your local Barnes and Noble or your local bookstore, whatever it may be.
Exactly. Yeah, go to any local bookstore, even if it's Barnes and Noble, and request her stuff. Request Fairhaven and request the newest one coming out, Lucid Scream.
Yeah.
You should even do it right now before it even comes out on the 28th, so that way they know. They know that it's a new release coming, and you want that damn thing, like, right in the store.
Yeah.
So,
y'all better want that damn thing. Go request it right now.
Yeah, that's right. Support the indie author here. That way, feed her puppies, her dog, or whatever she has. I don't even know what animal you have, but actually, I know you have a dog, so yeah, that works. A puppy, yes.
Yeah, I have kids too, but they can fend for themselves. Feed my dogs.
Yeah, the kids can eat dirt because kids love to eat dirt. They like to make mud pies too, so
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, Red, so to wrap this up real quick too is like I mentioned at the beginning, it is Women in Horror Month. So what does Women in Horror Month mean to you?
Women in Horror Month was kind of a surprise to me because I learned about it right after I started writing, and I thought, oh wow, this is like the way to actually be heard a little more. So, and also I didn't even realize this year, I didn't even realize that when I set the release date for lucid screens. I didn't know that it was actually during Women in Horror Month. I forgot that was during February. Excuse me. So, like, probably like a few years ago when I started writing and reading more horror, I went to, the bookstore, and I looked on the horror section, and it was mostly men, mostly men on the shelves. Those are the ones that are really getting shelf space. And then I Googled, horror authors, and probably a good 75% of what showed up were male authors, with the exception of Mary Shelley, who's not even alive, and Shirley Jackson, Anne Rice, the giants. But there weren't a lot of other lesser known female writers on the shelves or popping up on Google. So Women in Horror Month is just kind of a cool time to make space for those lesser known female authors, and I'm happy with it. I like to see that, at least now in the horror community, like when I'm on Twitter and I see people in the horror community, there does seem to be a lot more room for women at the table. I'm seeing a lot more recognition for women. But I would really like to see more of them on those shelves, more of them published by the big five companies, and so hopefully this month will, just give recognition to those underrepresented writers.
Yeah, I like that. I like that answer. And the final question that I have for the women in horror is there any women, whether it be actor, director, writer, pretty much anybody, any female at the time that inspired you, who you look up to, or anything like that?
Yeah, I am. So I've only read one of her works, but Sarah Tatlinger. I really enjoyed her novella, To Be Devoured. I loved her writing style. I loved her storytelling. It just moved me from one page to the next. I tend to do not finish a lot of books because they just lose me. They lose my attention, and it's not that it's bad. I need to be pushed from one page to the next, and her writing really did that. And also Laurel Hightower. I think she just did her debut novel last year, I think. And I just read that for my first book in January, and it was so cool. It was such good writing, and it blew me away that it was her debut novel too. So I kind of aspire to be a better writer looking at their works.
I'll have to check these out now too. So they sound very.
Laurel Hightower wrote Whispers in the Dark.
Hmm.
And Sarah Tantlinger, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name right, but she wrote To Be Devoured, and they were both pretty good.
Yeah, I'll have to look them up right after this so I can check them out and see if I.
Add them to your list.
Yeah, add them to my list for sure.
Yeah.
The waiting. But I will eventually. There will be a light at the end of that tunnel.
Yeah, well, read those before you read Fairhaven. Fairhaven is.
Oh, geez. Come on.
Fairhaven can wait.
Oh, boy. Well, okay, Red. Well, thank you so much for your time, and it was a pleasure to finally get a chat with you, even though it's been like a year, and I feel like a douche for not reaching out to you last year for the Women in Horror Month. But hey, I mean, we could work.
No, I didn't even know what I was doing last year. I feel like I'm just now kind of, I don't know, I guess I'm just now getting a grip on things, if that makes sense. So I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. I hope it does. I feel like I have a better idea of what it means to be a writer now. So I appreciate you offering for me to come on.
Well, of course, I mean, indie authors need the spotlight just as much as anybody else does, right?
Yeah, if not more, because nobody knows what we're doing.
That's true. And some of the indie authors, or really indie creators in general, they sometimes can make the most interesting stuff, and whether it be, movie, books, comic, uh, TV show,
Mhm.
acting, it doesn't really matter, but sometimes their work just does not get the credit they really do deserve. And it's sad because then, we get some people that disappear because they couldn't get that light, so they just kind of give up, really. But with you, I
Yeah.
don't see you giving up anytime soon.
No, no, I don't have. I'm not a quitter. Like I
Well, that's
have this.
right.
I have this need to succeed at things. I've always been. I don't want to call myself competitive. I'm competitive in other things, but for writing, I'm very, I guess, competitive with myself. I need to do better for myself.
That's right. And the only way to get better is by learning more of what we can do and not do.
Yep. Yep. I just gonna keep writing and keep submitting and see what happens.
And there you go. Well, more power to you, Red, and I can't wait to check out any of your other upcoming stuff as well. So thank you again for your time.
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. And for everybody else listening, make sure to, like we were talking about, go to your local bookstore. And if you don't know where a local bookstore is, well, I guess that's what Google is for, right? You just go to
Mhm.
google.com, type in local bookstores, and boom, it will tell you. And then what you do is you drive over there, or if you're lazy too, you can call and request read books like Fairhaven, or maybe try to push the upcoming release of Lucid Screams, because wink,
Yeah.
wink, get that type of stuff in your bookstores. Get indie authors more into the bookstore, because otherwise nobody's gonna even know that they exist unless it's people like us that pretty much shove it down your throat, really, because because we like the work so much that we want to help get them out there, and the only way we're going to do it is by throwing it in your faces, I guess. Hopefully the book doesn't hit too hard in the face either, but but, uh, but until next time, everybody, make sure you look behind every corner, every nook and cranny. Don't get bitten by this zombie thing, and if you do get bitten, well, I guess get shot in the heart, because then you won't have the oxygen to breathe to go to your brain, and then you will die. Otherwise,
That's true.
otherwise, I guess, man, what could I even say to this? Make sure when you're walking, either in the forest or stumbling upon something really weird that may be in the shape of a penis or something. I mean, make sure you hope it's not a lucid scream. So until next time, everybody, stay scary.